Welcome dear students to one more session of chapter number 6, that is tissues. In our previous session we studied about plant tissues and specifically we studied about complex permanent tissues in our previous session. In this we studied that complex permanent tissues are made up of more than one types of tissues, and xylem and phloem are two types of complex permanent tissues. We also learned that xylem is made up of xylem parenchyma, xylem fibers, tracheids and vessels. Similarly, phloem is also made up of sieve tubes, companion cells, phloem fibers and phloem parenchyma. Children, in today's session, we will start with animal tissues. There are so many types of animal tissues. In today's session, we will discuss about epithelial tissues only. So, in today's session, we will study about different types of epithelial tissues like squamous epithelial tissues, stratified squamous epithelial tissues, cuboidal tissues, columnar tissues and ciliated epithelial tissues and glandular epithelium. So let us begin our session. I will start the session with a very basic question. Children, what happens when we breathe? There is some movement which takes place in our body. Physically, if you want to observe whether the breathing process is occurring or not, then how you will observe? The answer is very simple, just by looking at the movement of chest. So if the chest is moving, we can have some idea that yes, breathing process is going on. So how do these body parts move? These body parts move with the help of specialized cells which are called as muscles. Now there is one more question, children. Where does inhaled oxygen go during breathing? When we inhale oxygen, we take in oxygen into our lungs. Then from there, where it goes in our body? And why would cells need oxygen? We all know in our previous classes we have studied that when we inhale air, the oxygen rich air, it goes into our lungs, and from there that oxygen is diffused into blood, and from blood it reaches to each and every part of our body where all these cells get this purified or oxygen rich blood. And then what happens with this oxygen in the cell? If you remember, children, in our previous chapter, that is chapter number 5, cells, we studied about the functions of mitochondria. You can very easily relate the functions of mitochondria with this breathing process. So we know that blood and muscles are both examples of tissues. On the basis of function, there are different types of tissues. So systematically, animal tissues can be divided into various groups like epithelial tissues, connective tissues, muscular tissues and nervous tissues. Epithelial tissues can be divided further into squamous, cuboidal, columnar, ciliated and glandular tissues. Similarly, connective tissue can also be divided into areolar, adipose, skeletal and fluid type of tissues, in which the skeletal tissues can be divided into bone and cartilage, and fluid can be divided into blood and lymph. Similarly, you will see so many types of further gradations in these tissues. We will discuss all other types of tissues later on. In today's session, we will specifically focus on epithelial tissues. So let us begin with epithelial tissues. Children, as its name suggests, epithelium. Epi means covering. So this type of tissue is present at the coverings of various body parts. It is present outside of that body part as well as inside as a lining. So lining, covering and glandular tissues of body have this epithelial tissues. Functions include protection, absorption, filtration and secretion, etc. And there are certain specific properties of these epithelial tissues, that is, they are avascular tissues, they reproduce very rapidly and they are packed together very tightly. So now let us discuss about some more general and common features. These are covering and protective tissues. It covers most of the organs and cavities within our body. So most of the organs which are present in our body are surrounded by or covered by layers of epithelium. Similarly, there are so many cavities in our body. These cavities are also having a lining of epithelial tissues. Epithelial tissues also forms a barrier to keep the different body systems separate from each other. The examples of such type of tissues are the skin, lining of the mouth and blood vessels, lung alveoli and kidney tubules, etc. Now let us focus on the general structure and composition of epithelial tissues. Here in this diagram, you can see that there are so many cells which are compactly arranged, and there is almost nil intercellular space between them. So we can say that tightly packed cells are present in epithelial tissues, and these cells forms a continuous sheath which forms a layer. Almost no intercellular space and a very small amount of a cementing material is also present. Anything which is entering or leaving the body must cross at least one layer of this tissue. So this tissue plays a very important role in protection and transportation of various things. Permeability of epithelial cells enables them to regulate exchange of materials between body and external environment and also between different parts of the body. So this epithelial tissue plays a very important role in transporting various things in and out of the body, in between the different organs, etc. And there is one more very unique specific feature of these epithelial tissue, that is the presence of basement membrane. Children, this basement membrane separates epithelium from underlying tissues. Or you can understand it like this, like if in case below epithelial tissues there is some other thing or some other kind of tissues, so that tissues will be separated from epithelium tissues by a layer of basement membrane. So this basement membrane, you can see here in this diagram that a basement membrane is present here, which is separating the epithelial cells from other tissues. Now let us focus here on the classification of epithelium. This classification can be done on various bases. Like for example, a number of layers can be a basis for classification of epithelium. When a single layer is present, that time that epithelium will be called as simple epithelium. And when so many layers are present, that layer of epitheliums will be called as stratified epithelium. Children, if you will connect this word stratified, you will come to know that you have studied about stratified rocks in your geography. The same way here also, when there are so many layers of epithelial tissues, that layers forms a kind of a strata. That is why this name stratified epithelium is given to these kind of epithelial tissues. Now, on the basis of cell shape also, these epithelium can be divided into different groups. When the cell shape is squamous, that time it will be called as squamous epithelial tissues. If the cell shape is cuboidal, in that case it will be called as cuboidal epithelial tissues. But if the cell shape is columnar, like a pillar, tall pillars, that time it will be called as columnar epithelial tissues. So on the basis of various layers and cell shapes, we can broadly divide these epithelial tissues into four categories: simple cuboidal tissues, simple squamous tissues, simple columnar tissues, and stratified squamous epithelium. Now here in this slide also you can see that various types of epithelial tissues are shown here. We are going to study these four types of epithelial tissues in detail. So now let us begin with the simple squamous epithelium. Simple squamous epithelium is made up of extremely thin flat cells and it forms a very delicate lining or a layer. The example of simple squamous epithelium is esophagus and the lining of mouth, skin, etc. In skin, epithelial cells are arranged in many layers to prevent wear and tear of skin. When these cells are arranged in patterns of layer, it is called as stratified squamous epithelium. So now we will study about stratified epithelium. Stratified squamous epithelium has cells at the free edge are flattened, and it is found as a protective covering where friction is common, and this friction is common in the areas of high aberration, and its location is in skin, mouth, esophagus and other body parts. Here in this diagram you can see stratified squamous epithelium. You can see here so many stratas are there. This is one strata, here one more strata and one more strata. Similarly, you can see here other stratas are there. And you can also see a very important part here, that is your basement membrane, which is separating this tissue from these tissues. Now we will study about simple cuboidal epithelium. As its name suggests, that cuboidal means its shape is cuboid. So let us focus on the structure of the simple cuboidal epithelium. These are single layer of cube shaped cells, and the function is secretion and transportation in glands, filtration in kidneys, and its location is in glands and ducts, specifically in pancreas and salivary glands, and it is also present in kidney tubules, and it covers the ovaries also. So here in this diagram you can see simple cuboidal epithelial cells. The shape of the cells is cuboid, that is why it is called as simple cuboidal epithelial cells. Now we will study about columnar ciliated epithelium. So here also its name suggests columnar means column-like. Column means pillar-like structure. So this pillar-like structure or this particular kind of epithelial cells facilitates the movement across the epithelial barrier. In intestine, it helps in absorption and secretion of various glands. In respiratory tract, columnar epithelium also has cilia. Cilia is nothing, just a hair-like projection. So these cilia are present on the outer surface. These cilia can move, and this movement pushes the mucus forward to clear the passage. This type of epithelium is called as ciliated columnar epithelium. So here in this diagram you can see the structure of ciliated epithelium. In this structure you can see here like projections here, and these are called as cilia. So these cilia have here like projections so that it can move, and this movement helps in pushing the mucus forward to clear the passage. Similarly, these cilia or hair-like projections are present in the respiratory tract also. Now there is another type of epithelium which is called as glandular epithelium. Sometimes portions of epithelial tissues fold inward and a multicellular gland is formed. This is glandular epithelium. So here in this diagram again you can see a glandular epithelium which is having basement membrane. Here is the basement membrane, and in this diagram also you can see glandular epithelium here. So glandular epithelium is present in this entire area from here to here, and this helps in secretion of various things. Here also in this diagram you can see the glandular epithelium. Let's now quickly conclude what we have done in today's session. Epithelial tissues are widespread throughout the entire body. They form the covering of all body surfaces, lining body cavities and hollow organs, and are the major tissues in the glands. They perform a variety of functions which include protection, secretion, absorption, excretion, filtration, diffusion, and sensory reception. There are three principal cell shapes which are associated with epithelium: squamous epithelium, cuboidal epithelium, and columnar epithelium. And when these epithelium cells are present in single layer, that time it will be called as simple, and when it is present in the form of various layers, multiple layers, it will be called as stratified epithelium. Now there are some questions for you children. We will quickly go through the questions. The first question is, what is glandular epithelium? Second question is, what is the main function of ciliated columnar epithelium in respiratory tract? And the third question is, what are the main features of simple squamous epithelium? Children, you have to write down the answer of these questions in your own word in a rough notebook. Thank you.